Let's look at it state by state. Now, it's also important to understand, and we'll all remember from our own personal history, that although the United States now is at a point where we believe in the so-called principle of one person, one vote, or equal opportunity for voting, the history of the Constitution was one of struggle to increase the voting rights of people. At the time that the Constitution was first enacted, who couldn't vote? Women. Ms. Bernard, you see, first thing, women could not vote, that's right. Who else couldn't vote?
Blacks.
Black people couldn't vote, that's right. And we have a whole list of others, but even before that, as the Constitution was being developed state by state, certain classes of white men couldn't vote. We know about the poll tax from our bitter history as black people in this country, of a poll tax being created in southern states where you had to pay in order to qualify to vote. And eventually, and you see from my little outline here, there was a constitutional amendment that outlawed poll taxes. But at the beginning of our country, poll taxes were actually used to restrict the ability of white men to vote. The founding fathers, or in many states, thought that only those who had property, only those who had a certain level of income should be allowed to vote. So there were a whole range of low-income whites around the country who could not vote. So then they started to allow that, and they also allowed a lot of substitutions. That is, if you had land, that counted. So over time, you see this steady march of increasing voting rights. First for white men, then of course the Civil War, and we had amendments that allowed black people to vote. Then all the way into the 20th century, early part of the 20th century, we had the expansion Constitution for women to vote. Then 18-year-olds got the right to vote, so there was this long expansion. Why do I mention that now? The problem that's going on around the country, and I know Pat will probably talk about this, is there's an attempt to restrict the right to vote now. And it's being done very cynically, very targeted. In about 37 states around the country now, you have to have what I would call the equivalent of a poll tax, and that is a photo identification. And in some states, it's not just any photo. You can't bring, you know, your bank card or something, or like our university ID. No, it has to be from certain agencies, usually the Motor Vehicle Administration, but some will say a state-issued voter identification card. And if you can't get to the poll, get to that agency to get the identification card, then you can't vote. Well,